Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Delusional Talks with You and I. I am your host, Clara. I hope everybody's been having a lovely week. I'm kind of dressed in a matching sweatpants set because it's been really cold. The weather has been insanely weird. I don't know, a couple days ago it was insanely hot and then it got insanely cold the next day, and I don't know, it's been all over the place. So that's why I'm in a matching set. It's kind of cold. I know a couple episodes ago I talked about post grad and all the struggles and stuff, and the biggest thing that happens in post grad that I think I as I'm talking to all my friends and stuff and what they're also experiencing is loneliness and being alone. And I thought for today's episode it'd be really nice to talk about how being alone doesn't necessarily mean that you're lonely. And I think that's such an important thing to differentiate, because I feel especially post grad, you deal with a lot of time, you spend a lot of time alone. And I think that's genuinely so important. Honestly, I feel it depends on the situation, because some of my friends, they are in corporate, so they are they have a cohort that they spend time with, because they all enter at the same time and they're all the same age. And so they have a set of friend group. It's you enter college and then you have that orientation group. I don't know if you guys had that, but at Berkeley there was this thing called GBO, where you enter with they assign you to a group of people, and it's kind of like that, except you're working with them. Outside of that, okay, nothing in this world is the same. No one goes through the same things at the same time. So I'm talking very generally, but I think you learn a lot about what it means to be alone. At least for me, I learned a lot more about what it means to be alone. At the same time, I made the revelation that I'm not lonely though. And I'm somebody who always thought that not being with people meant that I would feel so lonely. And I think I never gave myself the chance to spend some time by myself. Obviously I'm not with people 24/7, that's literally impossible, but if I could have the opportunity and I could make plans, I would always pack the day up. So my entire day would be either with friends, or if I'm doing something going to classes, or and obviously I'd be alone when I go back home. But even then I wasn't really alone, because I always had my roommate, or I always had people around me in some shape or form. But so in that way, I guess I kind of avoided being alone, and I avoided it because I thought being alone means that you I was really scared of feeling lonely. And I think seriously, the 22 years that I've been living, I just genuinely have always been around people, and I made a conscious decision. And I think I always excused it with there's always people around, I'm always making plans, I love people, why do I need to learn how to be alone? But then post grad, I actually don't know if I'm not a typical case, but I feel I'm doing things that are a little bit different from other people, which makes me have a lot more leisure and flexibility to spend time alone, or be put in a position where I do need to spend more time alone. And I think that really kind of rewired my brain into so many different levels. And it's why I started appreciating and really understanding this concept of being alone, and the art of being alone, what it really does for you and the benefits that come with it. And that's something that I really wanted to talk about today, because I'm one of those people who confused being alone as being lonely. But it's genuinely, as somebody who's such an extrovert and who always needs to be surrounded by people, I'm telling you, being alone has a lot of perks, and I feel it's not talked about, and it's viewed as such a it has a very negative connotation with it. And I kind of wanted to delve into that and talk about my realizations and why it's so important. I hope this episode is also comforting in if you are spending a lot of time alone, and why it's so important, and how it benefits you so much in the long run. To jump off what I was talking about, how I love company, I think think it kind of led to like a strong dependency on people. And what I mean by that is like I started like, especially in college. No, I think in college I kind of stopped relying. I think I got more used to being alone because I feel like in high school you always are with the same people, and like especially my high school, it was like really divided between like people who take AP classes and who are just taking general classes. And because of that, and I didn't have like, I wasn't from a big school, so like I was around the exact same people, because like generally for our school, like the same group of people took the same classes, so I was just around the same exact people. And most of the time, like the people in my class were literally the same, except like plus or minus like 3 or 4 people, but I see those 3 or 4 people like in a different class anyways, so it's like always the same. But like in college, it's like really really hard. It's very very rare to have somebody who's in the same classes as you like all the time, even if you're the same major, because there's so many different options and opportunities within classes, that there's so many different classes that fit like the same requirement, that it's like like it's inevitable to have very very different classes from your friends, unless like once you build friends and you happen to be in the same major, and you guys want to like, and you guys happen to not take the same classes and need the same requirements, that you guys take it. Only one of my friends, they match their schedule, so every year or every semester they take at least one class together, and that's like a very rare occasion, because usually like I never heard of like such a thing. Because of that, like you generally don't have the same classes as your friends, or like you make friends in your classes, or even when you make friends in your classes, you're probably not going to have the same classes in the future. And like, you know, like things like got remote and like hybrid, you know, so like sometimes people don't even go to class and everybody has a lot of extracurriculars. The point is that like it's quite hard to like have the exact same schedule. So because of that, I did gain a lot more independence, in that I learned what it meant to like just be a little bit like, just to spend more time alone, like go to classes, go to libraries, you know. I felt like, because like I always had something to do, like school was always a backbone, so I always had something to study for. I always had something to prepare for. I was like always on the grind, or I was always hanging out with people, that like it just never felt like I was like putting myself into like places where I needed to do things alone, like where I wanted to actively go somewhere alone, or like explore by myself, or like do some self-care things. They were all like activities that I needed to do because like I was obligated to do, or like I had some priorities. But so as a result, I spent like very little time actually doing like self-care activities, things like hobbies. And honestly, like even in college, I had a very difficult time telling people what my hobbies were, because I would always be like, oh, just hanging out with people. And yeah, and I just called it there. I was just like, oh yeah, just like hanging out with people. But now looking back at it, I realize how important it is to like find hobbies for yourself, hobbies that you can do by yourself, for your own self, and like just have some time for yourself. That's something that you love to do because you love to do it, and it's not dependent on other people, which, you know, obviously hanging out with friends is literally, you know, depending on other people. And so then I realized that led to like an insane like dependency on people that I didn't even like, no, like I recognized, but I didn't really realize how like rooted it was, because it then kind of like led to like other different problems in my life, such as like expectations for people, especially like when I was in a relationship. Okay, the relationship definitely did not help either, because like when like it's not that, no, okay, let's go backwards. Also, because I was in a relationship, I always also had somebody around. You know, like if I'm not hanging out with friends, because for me, friends are like genuinely so important. So I always prioritize and learn how to balance between friends and a relationship. But like, because if I wasn't with friends, I was in like with my boyfriend. If I wasn't with my boyfriend, I was with friends. If I wasn't like with like, you know, like I had some place, like I don't even always have to be out. I can always be with my roommate at home or something. And, you know, I think that like honestly ties back to like attachment styles. It genuinely doesn't even have to be in relationships, but attachment styles are like so important to navigating your own relationship and realizing why you act the way you act. And I never really learned the importance of that, and I just kind of lived life so naively where I was just like, oh yeah, I just prefer these things over these things. I love doing these things, and so as a result, I'm just gonna do it. But like, you know what? That was being delusional, because genuinely I did all of these reasons because I had a certain attachment style, and I didn't even realize that I had a certain attachment style. And it kind of got worse as like I was like, because I wasn't being conscious of it, and as a result I was just like going into like these patterns of like comfort, which obviously were through like unhealthy attachment styles. Also, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think my relationship helped at all either, with like some parts of my relationship that did not help with my attachment style, but like later on that I didn't really realize, because I don't know, I never realized it. I was never like active about like, I wasn't really self-aware as a person. Like, I don't think I was self-aware in my relationship. I learned to be a lot more self-aware towards the end of my relationship, which was like, at that point I'm just like, okay, but no, it's gonna help me in the future. But anyways, yeah, so like for example, like people who are anxious, they often seek a lot of validation in like other people, and they need other people's validation to feel better about their current emotions. And I think like with anxious, like emotions get super heightened, especially when you're alone. Those emotions and those thoughts get amplified and you go into a spiral, because ultimately to feel a little bit better, you find comfort and validation from other people. So especially when you're alone, it becomes like a huge like, like a battlefield that you have to fight for. And I think that's why it's so important to find what's your attachment style and different ways to counteract it, because I feel like sometimes unhealthy like patterns can feel the most comfortable because you have been doing it your entire life. But when you try to do something that's more secure or more healthy, it feels weird, but it's only because you're not used to it. It's not because it's bad. It's genuinely like the most healthiest things you can do, but it feels horrible. It's just because you've never done it before, right? And so that's why I feel like it's also important to like get out of your comfort zone, force yourself to like recognize your behavior, be aware of it, and like find ways to like better yourself, because in the end, if you keep on seeking comfort, you're going to stay stagnant, which is very important to try to prevent. And I think that like attachment style, especially anxious, is what leads to feelings of loneliness when you're not surrounded by others. And so I think like genuinely trying to put yourself in places where you can focus on yourself, whether that's doing your own hobbies or doing some self-care, or like finding things that make you happy even when you're alone, is genuinely one of the best things you can do when you need to counteract like anxiousness, or like when you're anxious about not being with people or needing to seek validation with other people, because then you get so much reassurance and validation within yourself, and you learn to self-love yourself so much more that it becomes in like a domino effect. Like once you are able to get that trigger, like once you're able to trigger that, you'll feel so much more confident and so much more better about yourself, in addition to being able to trust yourself a lot more. Your voice becomes so much louder within you, and you're confident that you can trust your own self. And that's something I'm also going to talk about a little bit more later on the episode, about like things that I learned by being alone. But yeah, that's something that I just genuinely like find so much importance in, and like it's just it's such an important skill set to learn eventually, because it just helps in so many different relationships. It's perfectly fine to depend on others. I think like I think it's important to be able to lean on people, be able to trust people, but I feel like when it's like a bit too much, and then that's when it gets like a little bit like, oh, like it starts to get unhealthy, because then your voice, your inner voice is dependent on other people and it's not your inner voice anymore, you know? One last thing about like attachment styles, which I can honestly, I'm probably gonna do another episode on it, but like your attachment style, like it's so important to root it back to your childhood, because I never realized how much your childhood affects like your attachment style and how you develop and how you grow, like, and how your parents raise you, or like, you know, just like the environment you're in. And it genuinely made me so scared to have a child. Like I studied psychology in college. I knew how much, like, I knew different attachment styles, like the development process, and you know, like it's just like I always, like, I knew it and I educated myself on it, like, so I have a good background in it, but like seeing it like around me and like seeing like how much my friends are shaped because of like how their parents raised them really scared me. We were like talking about like different like of the flaws that we have, and it comes out through our parents, and I'm just like, oh my god, like I really don't want to mess up my child. You know what I mean? I want like a lot of kids. A lot of kids, I don't know what a lot is, but you know, like 3 kids, that's not a lot. I used to want 5 kids. Genuinely love kids and want kids, but then it just like freaked me out. Like I could be the reason why my kids gets messed up. And I'm like, oh my god, like I could add trauma to my kid's life. So then it made me like just step out of my bubble and be like, okay, whoa, that's really scary. I need to like be better. These are what my 20s are for. That was kind of off topic, but yeah, I got scared of like having a child. I was just like, oh my god, like I'm still young, so I don't really have to think about it. But then I was just like, it just made me really think, damn, like I am like going to shape somebody's life one day, you know, like I'm gonna have an impact. I better do it right. Anyways, yeah, that was like kind of a freak out session with like me and my friends, and we were like, oh my god, we really need to like do better. Like we just need to like, for our kids' sake, we need to genuinely get our life together. But anyways, yeah, basically that's why attachment styles are so important. So yeah, I like read a book on it, and it just like traced it all back, and I think it like makes you get a lot of self-realizations about like, oh wow, this is really like why I'm acting the way I'm acting, or why I think the way I'm thinking. It's definitely not easy to try to change your attachment style. It seems easy, but it genuinely isn't. But I think like nothing's easy, you know, like we have to take it one step at a time. And I tend to like kind of jump the gun sometimes, and I just realized, you know, baby steps are just so important, and like how you think about things is just so important. And like going back into like post grad and like finding those independence, the one thing that I struggled with, like, or I am struggling with, or what I'm going through is like post grad is so hard. It's because like there's no constant in your life. Like I always say this, but like college was genuinely like a really great backbone for me. Like I had a reason. It was just something that I could rely on as like what I'm working for. Like I have school, but like me and my friend was talking about this, but like he's not really in post grad, but like he doesn't know what he's working for. Like he's like working, he has all these hobbies, but there's no like actual motivation that like is making him like really grind like he did during school. And like school, it was either like he was working towards something like a master's program, or like he wants to get a good job, or there's some goals. But like once you hit like post grad, or like after post grad, like a year or two like in, it becomes easy to forget about what you're doing and like why you're doing what you're doing, you know. Like I'm not there yet because I think I just entered post grad, but it's hard for me like in that like I feel like really lost, you know. Like I think I'm like navigating, working, also finding finding a job that really suits me, and also like spending like time alone, but also spending it time with friends. And I think I keep on getting into the habit of like always associate my free time with, oh, hanging out with friends. But like that's not always the case, you know. Like you always have to do stuff for yourself. You have to do chores, live your life to the best of its fulfillment. And like that made me like question like a lot about like what I'm doing, and like how that comes back to my sense of independence and what I need to figure out. And then one thing that I found out like with postgrad is like you need to find your passions and what you are working for in life. And something that really hit me is like, are you living your life day by day just to get through each day, or are you living your life each day with so much fulfillment, passion like no other, like those are very two different scenarios. It made me contemplate, am I like living just to live, or am I really getting the most out of each day because I'm living it with so much fulfillment? And then that leads to like, oh, like what do I really want to do with my life, and what are my passions? And I think that's what post grad, but like being alone really gets you to think about, because when you're alone, you do a lot of self reflection for yourself, like what is important to you, what you want to live for, what you really love, what you dislike, and that's not dependent on other people. And I think that's why being alone is so important, because of how much it puts you within yourself. And it's the fact that you're not surrounded by people, you take a moment to see and reflect about just purely yourself without comparing yourself with others. And I think that's the step. That's another step into why being alone is so important. I always tend to compare myself with other people, which gets me into like a horrible mood when I realize, oh, maybe I'm not doing enough. And then that gets me into a cycle, and it's not good. But when I'm alone, it prioritizes myself and not other people. Like it genuinely makes me think about just what I want to do and brings more confidence within myself. When I know and I'm confident in myself, I realize that gets projected to the realities of like what I'm doing and how I'm acting, and genuinely makes me so much happier. It's so like crazy how much more stability and greatness it brings just by me being able to trust myself and what I'm doing without like thinking about what other people are doing or what other people would think about me. And that's something that I genuinely lacked throughout like most of my life, because I was always constantly trying to race with other people in a race that like they're not even racing in, like I'm just racing with people that like basically I think I'm racing with a genuinely like this entire world, but like nobody's actually participating in the race, and I'm just like, like what I mean. It's just like they just like waste so much time on my part, and it doesn't put like all my focus into my life. It makes me focus on other people's life and how my life fits into their life, and not like the other way around, when I'm like the main character in my own life just as much as everybody's their own main character in their own life. That's like something that really helped me start to love my own company and really build my own foundation and what I really want to do and find my passions. And like it can be like the very like most minimalistic things, like the small things. Like I started love doing my nails. Like I love watching K-dramas and doing nails. Like it's the most peaceful thing, and I don't even have to do it every single day. Like I can do it once every like 2 weeks, once a week, or like just like whenever I feel like it. And it's just the most fulfilling, peaceful thing. And it was like such a great investment, because like sometimes like I would just like watch K-dramas, like, but like now that I add nails to it, I don't know, it's just so much more fulfilling. It's so much more peaceful, and I love being able to do what I love to do after like having so many busy days and like just needing to rest or need a mental break, a self-care break. And until now, I genuinely didn't feel like I ever needed like that. I was just like, why? I can just hang out with people. That's like my best thing. But like it never, like, because I'm always around people, like no matter how extroverted you are, like it still requires people. You still have to interact with people. It's not like you're not letting anything like down. Like that's not me saying like when you're with like friends or family, like you can't be your true self, but it's just like sometimes you just need a time to just be by yourself, think for yourself, be alone, and have that peace of mind and self-care for yourself. Because being with people and being alone has like very two different benefits that you can only get, like these benefits you can only get separately. To get ultimate package deal of all of these benefits is by being able to prioritize and balance being with people versus being alone, like having that balance between these two things. Like I feel like I was just so hyper focused on only one side of things that it was like so imbalanced that I only got the benefits of what it's like to be with people and like having genuine connections. I used to always like get scared. I was like, oh my gosh, am I becoming introverted by not hanging out with people anymore? I always used to be so insecure about like, oh my gosh, am I getting am I being an introvert, or am I spending too much time alone? But like thinking back to it, like I'm not even like spending any less time with my people. I'm just also prioritizing my mental health, my like self-care routine, and like just like doing things for me. And like, you know what, you can't always live in a world where you're doing things with people. And so many studies have shown that like spending time alone can increase activity in the brain's default mode network, the DMN, which is very, very important and is associated with self-reflection and creativity. And people who meditate, a big thing that's activated is the DMN. And because of that, meditation actually increases self-awareness and how you're feeling, and honestly regulates it helps regulate your emotions much, much better. And so just genuinely, this means that on a neuropsychological level, being alone increases your self-awareness and helps you learn a lot more about yourself, you know? Okay, so after going through my breakup, something that I realized that I never actually realized, like until like months after, while I was like going through like one of the hardest breakups in my life, like it was honestly, I have to say, within like the top 3 like hardships that I've ever felt in life. And like I've never felt that down, and I realized that it's because I had no foundation. And like at the time, like all I could think about was like, wow, this sucks, when is it gonna be over? But like looking back, and like as I was going through it, actually even when I was going through it, I made the realization I was having such a difficult time because of the lack of foundation I had within myself, with having self-love, self-respect. That all was a result of me being super dependent on my significant other or people. And it's not, the dependency does not necessarily mean clingy. Like I was not a clingy person, I wasn't needy, I wasn't high maintenance, but like the dependency as in like without that person, I felt like my world completely disappeared. Like it fell apart. Like it literally felt like it fell apart. And I think it's genuinely because I didn't have enough structure in my life within myself. Like you can literally like have a significant other, have people around you, while being able to have such a strong foundation within yourself and having so much self-love that even if they're gone, it's going to hurt, it's going to be sad, but you're so confident within yourself, you love yourself so much that you'll be okay and you'll bounce back more. Either way, like no matter what, even if you don't have a foundation, I do truly believe that you are gonna bounce back, like you will get through it. But for me, like it like literally like broke me, because it broke me a lot more because I didn't have that. And like now I'm at such a much stronger place in my life because I was able to learn who I was, what I loved, and what I needed in my life, and how I could get that for myself, not get that validation or get those needs from other people, especially your significant other, for example. There are certain things that require other people, but a significant amount of things are all within you. What you need, what you get to have, and it increases, it lifts your standards, but it also like shows you what you deserve in your life and what you're no longer willing to tolerate. When I look back at it, especially through my like relationship, I went through like a lot. I accepted so much shit that I should not have accepted at all, and it doesn't like devalue the amount of love or amount of beauty that relationship brought me, but like because I had no foundation, I just tolerated anything and everything. And that in itself is because like I was just so hyper focused on like having somebody, instead of realizing, dude, like I have myself. At the end of the day, you have only yourself. Most important relationship in your life is within yourself, you know, like it's literally within yourself. And because I didn't build that relationship with myself and I didn't give it enough love, it just like broke down. Like, you know, like my world just collapsed when I started to like go through like really hard times. And why this foundation is so important, and why building this relationship with yourself is so important, is because when you have a hard time, or when like the world throws shit at you, because it will, you have only yourself, and you're the only one responsible to like deal with that. Like no one else can genuinely go through it or deal with it the way that you need to go through it, because at the end of the day it's your problem, right? So building that relationship and foundation makes you so much stronger, and it gives you that resilience you need to deal with these problems. And even when the problem is so hard and like it feels unbearable, you find the strength within yourself because of how much self-love, how much confidence, how much you built like within you, that like you're able to project that to face these problems with so much strength. Even when you feel like you can't, it's totally possible. So like that's why I realized like how important that foundation was. And as somebody who never had that, like I can tell you, like it feels like such shit, because you realize, wow, I didn't take care of myself at all, and I didn't give myself love. Just as much as you can give to another person, that amount of love that you're willing to sacrifice and give at the expense of yourself, you should be able to give just as much, probably, and it should be like much more to yourself first. Make sure you're able to focus your love not at just giving other people, but yourself, because you need to realize that like while you're like giving so much to everybody, you're sacrificing so much for yourself, and you're not focusing on yourself. But the only person that you have within yourself is you, right? It's not somebody else. They're not going to solve all your problems. They can't read your mind. It's all within you, and that can only be built if you're willing to give just as much and even more to yourself first. And that's why I think like it's that saying is so important. Before you can love somebody else, it's so important to be able to learn how to love yourself first, because if you can love yourself, I think the love that you give to others will be just 10 times more powerful, 10 times more confident, and you just don't have to sacrifice yourself while you're giving your love to other people. And that in itself should never happen. Like you should never give love at the expense of your own self-love and your own self-respect. And I think that all kind of ties together. This is all to say why being alone is not being lonely. It genuinely is something that really benefits you at the end of the day, and it creates so much love and so much strength within you. It's so crazy, and it's so like beautiful and magical. I can't emphasize on how much I was able to learn this through the act of being alone. And if I didn't face my fear of like this feeling of being alone because I might be lonely, I would have never been able to get to the place that I am today, which would be a completely different version. Like I would have never found my passions. I would have never found out who I am, what I genuinely love, what I want in people, who I want in my life, and what I can provide to other people, because I'm able to provide that for myself, and more importantly, because I put myself first. And all of these things sound so basic. Like literally it just sounds so basic, but like I can't even express to you like how just like crazy this concept was to me. Like let's just say like a year ago, Clara was like genuinely going through it. Like I was like trying to figure out my like self-worth, self-respect, and like I would not have been able to like find that. Ironically, like I was not able to find that until I was put into positions where I needed to be alone. And then post grad like put me into another position of where I needed to be alone in different ways, where I just needed to find my own hobbies, how I can like really grow as a person that's not within the stereotypical norm or package of like corporate life or like 9 to 5, or you know, like just doing like having a job that I'm not passionate about and just going through life, just you know, just living life, but it's not really living life, it's just surviving, you know. So like basically that whole thing was like one of the things that I learned, which got me to really love and appreciate what it meant to love my own company and who I am as a person. And I want to go into like other things that I learned to like really showcase why this is so important. Some things that I really learned while going through this like process and understanding of what it truly means to be alone but not lonely is that you really get to learn how to have have your own opinion. So I'm going to read a quote that's going to really encompass what I learned on how to love my own company. And it's this. It's when the voice and the vision on the inside is more profound and more clear and loud than all opinions on the outside, you've begun to master your life. That in itself was so like inspirational, in that like I realized when you're not alone, when you have not mastered what it means to be alone and not lonely, your voice is no longer your voice. It's the echo of other people and what they think. But when I started to appreciate and love being alone, I realized my inner voice became so much louder that even if I had doubts, they were doubts because of things that I was trying to consider about a situation, and not doubts dependent on me comparing with other people. And if I felt 10 times, 1,000 times more confident in my decisions because I knew the potential I had and I knew what I wanted. And this is not to say you can't get advice from other people. I like getting advice from other people, like listening to them, 100%. That's totally okay, and that's honestly like recommended. Like you should hear about like what other people go through, like what they think about things, but your voice is the one that ultimately makes that decision. You are the one that makes that decision, and it's so important to be able to live a life that's for you and not for other people. And that's what this quote exactly means. It's when your voice becomes so much louder than other people's voices, no matter what other people do or what they say, you're going to still do what you want to do because you want to do it and you're passionate about it. And that's the greatest fulfillment that you can do. And that also makes you 10 times more confident in the choices you make, because even if you end up regretting it, you regret it with a lesson. You regret it with an understanding of what not to do. And you become, and it honestly doesn't even become a regret. It becomes something that, oh yeah, I made this decision. I know now what not to do. Everyone goes through and makes mistakes, like it's important that you learn from the regret, and you learn from mistakes rather than listening to other people, following the book that's made for other people, and like listening to that and then making just a bunch of mistakes because you lived a life that's not meant for you. And honestly, your life is for you. It's not other people. So you can't follow a rule book for other people because it's not going to mesh with you unless you guys lived in the most identical life, which that means it's not even your life anymore, right? Because you need to make decisions for yourself, and everyone's just so different. And I think that's something that I really learned, and this is something that made such an impact in my life, being able to build that foundation that I was talking about. And when your voice becomes louder than other people's voices, that's when you stop comparing yourself to other people, because there's no perfection in this world. You're always going to want more and more and more, and you need to make the most of what you want to have. Like when you reach a goal, you're gonna want something else. I mentioned this before in one of my episodes about the treadmill effect. It's like once you get something, you go back to the state of happiness that you were before, even if you think that goal was going to give you ultimate happiness. And that's the same thing. It's you're going to always try to search for more, and so might as well do things that you want to do that's not in comparison to other people or because other people are doing it. And at the end of the day, if you're doing something because another person is doing it, or because another person says that that's what your goal should be, or this is what success means, when you get there, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fulfilled that you achieved it, because it's going to be even if you're happy, you're going to think about it, you're going to be happy for very momentarily, and then you're going to realize, wait a minute, that's not what I want. Even that happiness is not your full potential of what happiness is, because it's not your happiness. It's not because you wanted it. It's because somebody said that that's what success is or what your happiness should be. And then but they're not you, right? They're not your emotions. They can't control your emotions. This goes into this theory called the social comparison theory, and it's literally what it says. It's we often evaluate ourselves based on other people. As humans, we have a tendency to do that, but I'm going to be realistic, and I'm not going to say 100% I will never compare myself with other people in my entire life, that's not what I'm trying to say. But being alone really put myself into perspective of why it's important to not compare, and how to stop myself from doing it as often as I used to do. and more importantly, the fulfillment I get by not comparing myself. And I think it really puts a focus on like self-improvement instead of comparison. So like rather than me thinking, oh wow, like they're doing that but I'm doing this, so should I be doing that, I think about, I'm doing this right now, but how can I improve myself to get to the goals that I want to go that will bring me the same fulfillment as maybe somebody who's in a corporate job or something. Like it's not like directly comparing, it's like focusing on how I can improve for the goals that I have in mind and the lifestyle that I have. Okay, so there's this book called The Courage to Be Disliked, and it is one of my favorite books. Genuinely, it's really well written. I like highly recommend. The dialogue is amazing. Please read it. If there was a book to recommend, I would recommend this book. And in the book, it goes through a concept of social comparison. Like one of the chapters, it talks about this concept of social comparison, and so the entire book is based on this framework called Adlerian psychology. And so it goes into different concepts of it, but it emphasizes that comparing yourself to others is often a source of unnecessary suffering and is rooted within what Adler calls interpersonal competition. So basically, by comparing yourself to others, you trap yourself into a box of superiority and inferiority, which is a source of personal unhappiness. And basically what it's trying to say is that comparing yourself puts you onto a standard of other people's like criteria and not your own. So either you're superior than other people or inferior to other people, and it traps you into this box of where your happiness is now based on other people. And it goes into like what it means to truly obtain true happiness and fulfillment. It comes back to this concept that life isn't a competition. Your life is your own life. Another person's life is their own life. Like everybody is living through their own lives individually, and you're not competing for anything. So instead of measuring yourself against other people, the book basically talks about how you should adopt a horizontal perspective. So basically everybody's equals. Everybody's going through their own lives independently, and definitely goals will overlap, but everybody's doing it at their own pace. It helps shift your mindset into focusing on self-improvement and growth rather than like competing with other people or comparing yourself with other people. Like by distancing yourself away from social comparison, you're really defining your worth based on your own values and your own morals and goals rather than like comparing it based on other people's criteria or expectations. And that as a result increases your self-growth, your self-esteem, self-acceptance, and you just become happier overall because you're doing things based on the things that you want to fulfill your life with because you're happy and you're passionate about it, not because of other people's standards. Live your life to your greatest fulfillment, live authentically, just embrace your unique journey because that's so unique just to you. You don't have to survive in this world by meeting other people's standards because in the end you're going to fail. Those standards and expectations are for somebody else and they're not for you. It goes into this topic of separations of tasks. You should control the things you can and let go of the things you can't. So comparing yourself becomes one of those tasks where you can't control it. You can't control what somebody thinks of you. You can't control how they respond to you. And it kind of connects back to this let it be theory, like let them be theory of like if they do something, let them do it. Like you can't control it. It's not in your control. What is in your control is how you respond to it, how you decide to react to it, and what you decide to do moving forward. So like even comparison, like there's no point of comparing because you can't control anything that other people do in your life. You can only control yourself. And if you can control yourself, might as well do it to self-improve yourself and not like other people. You know what I mean? Like you can't do anything either way. So might as well just focus on yourself, be the best version of yourself. And like while you do that, the best people are going to come into your life. Let the people think what they want to think, because at the end of the day, they know nothing. They know absolutely nothing about your life, and you have no obligation to try to like convince them otherwise, you know? Like you don't need to justify any of your actions. Genuinely, you don't have to do any of that. It gives this liberating feeling that you're letting go of what other people think of you and like your comparison. Trying to force control into something that you can't control at the end of the day exerts so much energy, and like it's mentally exhausting. So let yourself free from that. Let yourself be able to just let everything go and just do things that you can control, which is yourself. And I kind of want to end this on the fact that like you are so strong. You can build more strength within yourself, and other people will only add more to your happiness. They're not going to be the source of your happiness. They're not going to be the reason you are happy. The best feeling is when you're so happy within yourself and you have people around you to just add more happiness to what happiness you already have for yourself. When you rely so much on other people, it shifts that power not within yourself, but to other people, and you lose control. But it's your life, so you should be the one who's the most powerful in your own life. So I think that's why it's so important to build your own confidence, be alone, be able to have so much strength and comfort in solitude, because at the end of the day, it's just going to benefit you. It's just for your own greatness, for your own happiness. And remember, like, people are here to only add more value, not deplete it, not be the source of it, but just to add value, you know? And it's just to augment this experience of happiness that you feel, fulfillment and purpose, you know? Like, you are here to live your own life. I think that's my conclusion of why like solitude is so important. Being alone does not mean that you're lonely. It genuinely means the opposite. Your own presence adds so much more value than other people. And why do you view it as being alone when you have yourself? You're not alone. Like, you have yourself. Having yourself is like the greatest presence that you can ask for. You are the last from being lonely. And I hope that this episode really shines some light of this like perspective, that being alone does not mean that you're lonely. Like, that literally took me years to freaking understand. So I've been there, done that, and I just want to share that I am so proud of every single one of you guys for being able to get through all of these hardships. It's like such a hard world that we live in, and it's so unfair, and it's just, you know, like, it beats you down, but you have the strength to get up, pick yourself up, and become stronger and better. And scene. Kidding. But yeah, so that's how I wanted to end this episode. I really hope you guys did enjoy, and I did the psychology fact a little bit. I incorporated it into the episode in itself instead of leaving it at the end like I usually do, which I hope is, honestly, it's tad bit more effective. So maybe I'll just continue to do that instead. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed it. It kind of makes me feel empowered, you know? Like, I feel like great. Like, it just kind of reinforces my thinking about, like, yeah, you know what? Being alone is so amazing. It's fabulous. That's not to say that having people around you is not important. It's actually one of the most important things to have. But if you don't, or you're trying to find your place in this world, that solitude that you have been like working towards and what you've been able to gain is just so beneficial. And I just wanted to emphasize that don't be afraid to be alone or enjoy your own company. That's so important. And do not compare yourself with other people and what they think about, like, you know, what is the expectation. Like, especially in college, don't be peer pressured that if everybody's out partying, you don't need to be partying. Like, you know what, enjoy your own solitude. Like, be happy, you know? Like, if you enjoy your own company and you want to be at home, like, playing games, or you want to laying down, like, doing whatever you want to do, listen to music, play guitar, like, do that, you know? Anyways, sorry, that's another rant. I've been like, I don't know how I got into that, but yeah, thank you guys so much again for tuning in to this week's episode. I really, really hope you guys enjoyed, and please leave a comment or any feedback that you guys have. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.